Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. And last night I watched the movie In a Violent Nature. I heard I'd already seen other reviews about this movie, and I already knew about how the film was taking a different approach, where it's constantly like showing the killer's point of view, and a lot of people were raving about that yoga kill scene, as they call it. So I finally got around to seeing the film when it came out on streaming on YouTube Movies, and I'm not very impressed by it. Um, there are some things that I do like. I do like the whole '80s aesthetic, like the whole throwback to like '80s slashers and B movies. And I do think that the scenery looks really nice. The color grading is alright. There's some shots that are pretty good. Like there's that one shot where the group of teenagers, they take a selfie, group selfie, and in the background you can see the killer Johnny just standing amongst the trees. That was a cool shot, and and in theory, the idea of having like an over-the-shoulder shot of the killer all the time is kind of cool. Like it kind of reminds me of when you're playing as Jason in the Friday the 13th video game. Unfortunately, because their approach was doing it for the entire film, it gets extremely boring really fast. Like, the movie's about like an hour and 33 minutes long. I'd say about 50 minutes of that is just Johnny walking. The design of the killer, like having an old school firefighter mask with like the really big round eye lenses, that's kind of cool. I think it makes it look a little bit unique, as opposed to just being a straight up Friday the 13th ripoff, which is basically what this movie was. It was a knockoff of Friday the 13th, but the gimmick was that you follow like the Jason or killer. Um, Unfortunately, again, it gets old real fast. The Going hand in hand with the whole '80s aesthetic, the writing, the acting, the dialogue was kind of in that wheelhouse, which, given that's what they wanted to go with, was okay. The kills and the gore effects were passable. I am going to say that I was not impressed by the yoga kill, and that's partially my fault, but it's also kind of the fault of the people who kept hyping it up. Like it's kind of the same thing with back when Evil Dead Rise came out, and people were clamoring about the scene with the cheese grater, like, or heck, even with the Terrifier movies, talking about how like, oh, people had barf bags with them, and and that became part of the marketing, and then it turns out that thing was overhyped. And it's the same thing in this film. Like the yoga kill is brutal, and I consider it like the most unique kill in the movie, but like it was like overhyped to death. To me, like the most shocking kill in the film was this one guy who gets his head crushed by Johnny lifting this huge rock and dropping it on him, and the thing, and that was more shocking for me, simply because Johnny like drops the rock and his head just explodes like a watermelon, like just an entire torrent of blood goes out. and I thought there'd only be like only a little bit of it. Um, uh, go. Um, moving on to specific kills, like um, the kills that aren't off screen. Like there's this one kill that involves like a wood splitter that again, a running theme with this movie is that I think it goes on for way too long. Like Johnny first uses it to split a log to see what it does, and then he uses it to cut off a dude's arm, and then he finally uses it to cut off the head, and that scene feels like it runs for about 5 minutes long. And I feel like they should have just at the very least cut out the part where the arm gets cut off. Just go straight to cutting off the head. Um, there's also these like really long monologues. Like there's this one where the teens are explaining like the legend of the killer Johnny, and not only does it go on for too long, but the camera is constantly spinning around and around the circle. Like there's no variety in the shots. And then there's another monologue that this one lady has at the very end of the film where it only really cuts between her and the only surviving teenager. And at that point, like, I just opened up a new tab and just started doing other stuff until the lady finished speaking, and then I went back to properly watching the film. And speaking of, this isn't exactly a knock on the film itself, and it might have been something with my TV or something, but I hate YouTube TV. Like every 5 or so minutes, the the movie had to pause and load to catch up, and eventually once I finished my snack and drink, I said, you know what, screw this. I'm just gonna go watch the rest of it on the computer since there was like a half hour of the film left. So yeah. Side note: YouTube TV sucks. Back to the kills. Um, the final kill in the movie. Um, I don't know if I was supposed to have this reaction, but it actually made me laugh a bit. Because like so basically, the two surviving teenagers at that point, they're trying to set a trap for the killer, and one of the teens decides that he's going to distract the killer by getting up behind him and start yelling at him from behind his back. And then, like in a split-second movement, the killer just turns around and just starts hacking at his body. And that was just so sudden and so surprising. I just started laughing, and I don't know if that was like the intention or not, but I just thought it was funny. So I don't know. Going back to the main issue that I have with this film is the fact that it follows Johnny the entire time. Like it's like watching an hour and a half long playthrough of a Friday the 13th game, and even with that game, I think the developers recognized that if you drag out the match too long, it gets boring even when you are playing as Jason. Because like when you don't immediately find campers or they are constantly hiding from you, like yeah, the game gets monotonous and boring. Like I honestly think that's the reason why each match is only 20 minutes long. And personally, I think that's what they should have done for this film. They should have kept it as a short film, just like Skinamarink, and honestly, just like Hardcore Henry. And the reason why I bring that up is because Hardcore Henry to me is like the antithesis of this, where in Violent Nature you're constantly following the killer going through his footsteps, but in Hardcore Henry, you're seeing through the protagonist's eyes for the entire film. And despite despite the fact that I love first-person shots, like I try to have them in almost every project that I do. Even I recognize that you shouldn't do that for an entire feature-length film because that gets boring too. Like, it works well with video games because it boosts the immersion, like Call of Duty or Doom, because like you are literally in the protagonist's shoes. But as immersive as I think it'll be for for movies to do that, I also recognize that like you can't have it be like the set shot for the entire film. That's why hardcore. That's one of the reasons why I think that Hardcore Henry didn't do as well as I had hoped. But again, you also can't have it follow the villain or the killer for the entire time. So I don't know. I just think there needs to be a balance for this. Like, yes, you can have a couple scenes where you are literally following the killer. I mean, like the 2018 Halloween film did that. And you can have a couple clips where it's like first person perspective, especially the kill scenes. Like I noticed that even Halloween Kills did that when Michael Myers is just tearing through the firefighters. There were a couple where you're seeing through a firefighter's POV as as Michael is killing them. But there has to be a balance between those two. Like, unfortunately, you can't have like one extreme or another. But those are just my 2 cents on this film. Overall, it was okay, but I just got bored with the fact that that we followed Johnny for basically the entire runtime. But other than that, those are all my thoughts about this film, and I'll see you guys in the next movie review.